well, as for the butterflies, they fluttered in the breeze, as if Mother Nature had acceded to this apparent April misnomer. Ward 16 of Mfakosi General Hospital had been without incident all morning until the clock struck 6, and then, with 2 slaps of a baby's bottom and a piercing cry, at 6 pounds and 5 ounces, Ronald had entered the fray of life. 33 weeks earlier, an ecstatic Rosalind had decided that her firstborn son would be called Ronald, for like his name, he'd be a mighty counselor. But alas, his father Rodwell was more inclined to bright of mind or spirit, commonly known as Hugo. As fate would have it, a month after the tot was born, his grandfather would give in to illness. And with that, Pasipanojga was thrown into the naming equation, for Mother Earth had opened up and swallowed the 64-year-old grandparent. At 5.5 years of age, the Ribatikas gave up the dusty streets of township life for the leafier suburbs of Harare. And with that, Hugo's first encounter with the English language. His sister Jessica and he would find great novelty in watching all the white people that would walk up and down 79th Avenue, presumably after running an errand or two. Their greeting, a rendition of the Queen's language as they knew it. Mfinso, mfinso, mfinso. Don't ask me what that means, for I do not have the faintest. Hugo soon made friends with Adrian and Gareth, who lived down the street from him. The ensuing multiracial friendship is exactly what the doctor ordered. The earliest indication that he had indeed overcome the previously existing language barrier was the frequency with which he was asked to read at assembly, recite prose, or narrate at the annual nativity play at Hallingbury School. Even Mrs. Butler, the old white lady who lived across the street, would often remark to Mrs. Ribatika about how well her son spoke. When he wasn't speaking, he was shouting on the field of sport. Cricket, hockey, soccer were his first loves. In fact, as a 10-year-old, not really knowing right from wrong, he chose to play in a Colts football match instead of taking mandatory bed rest. When he returned a week later, the class was bare, as everybody was still recovering from the chickenpox that he so unwittingly passed on that fateful Monday the week before. Time, as it often does, whizzed by ever so quickly, and in the twinkle of an eye, the teenager was nearing the end of high school. They taught him well at St. John's. Debate captain, public speaking president, football captain. In fact, we shan't go into detail of the hugest mauling that his team suffered in all the history of schools football, 30 years on, and he's still recovering. What will Hugo do with his life? Is a conversation that rambled on in the Ribatika household for many a day. His mum's advice to go into banking came out tops. Hello, Barclays Bank. He hit the ground running, stopping frauds and making friends between cups of coffee in the bank's back office. Impetuous as most adolescents are, he found the mundane nature of banking a little boring and was soon whisked away by one of the bank's esteemed clients. He found himself the administrator of a large packaging concern. He enjoyed it for a moment, and the Rolling Stone continued to gather little moss as he went from job to job, 10 to be exact, in a space of 11 years. He did learn a thing or two in that time. He worked for the country's national broadcaster. He ran a cricket franchise. He met a girl, fell in love, got married. 2 kids later, she left him. He misses them every day. Across the Limpopo he traveled for a fresh start, maybe in front of the camera, but as always, looking to make friends like these. He's 46 and still counting. Madam Toastmaster.
Bravo. Thank you, Hugo. And I think I should have just explained to the audience as well. Hugo, as well as our other two speakers this evening, are all doing this in pursuit of a Toastmasters project that they've got in the wings. So Hugo, I believe, has just started a new pathway, and this was his icebreaker. So thank you very much for gracing us with that. And I'll allow you to continue to tell us just a little bit more about your journey on the other side of Limpopo. And please do continue.
Okay, thank you very much. Hello, everyone. My name is Hugo. Delighted to be here. A big thank you to Anka for organizing this. My journey with speaking started, well, obviously from my icebreaker many years ago. But I have to say that speaking as a professional or doing it for a living is something that I stumbled upon. Right? In fact, I've said to many people that if my mum or my parents had picked up that I could speak as early as other people did, then it potentially could have changed the course of where I ended up. I've also been on broadcast for about 20 years. So my first gig on radio was at the tender age of 26 as a news anchor in Zim. And again, even then, it wasn't because I felt this is what I wanted to do. It just so happened that I knew a woman who was an anchor and I had a big crush on her. So I approached her because my girlfriend had auditioned for another TV station to find out what the processes were for me to anchor. And so I did, and got hired literally on the spot. So carved a career in broadcast. But I suppose what I'd like to share with you, and what I share with a lot of people, is that for some reason, mediocrity has won the day in many instances. And I say this because one of my favorite cliche sayings is, you miss every shot that you do not take. So there are a lot of talented individuals in this audience, in this country, in your district, that literally can kick ass. The one thing they lack is potentially the guts to go out and do it. So what you'll find is, it's the person who puts his hand up that is counted. I always say that Usain Bolt may not be the fastest guy. He's the fastest guy who's chosen to run. Because there are bucket loads of other individuals out there who potentially could run faster. But because they're either scared or the opportunity has not arisen, they've chosen not to run. And they've let the guy who's technically second best go out and run and do what they could do better. Perfect example is they only opened up the airwaves in Zim probably about 7 or 8 years ago. So before that, there was the equivalent of the SABC. So technically, one employer when it came to broadcast. And there was a guy, shan't say his name, not very good, but he was the most popular, right? But as soon as they opened up the airwaves, allowed other radio stations to come into being, there was an influx of young individuals that were super talented or very good at their craft. And this guy who used to be a superstar, all of a sudden was nowhere to be found, right? And the reason was he grabbed an opportunity. He was the only one who grabbed that opportunity. And the guys that were talented were either fearful or didn't want to expose themselves to broadcasting. The easiest way I find to get into speaking is to talk or speak on a subject matter that you're very familiar with. Number one. Number two, speak to an audience similar to Toastmasters or any other audience that does not expect payment from you, right? The reason you go this route is because when guys get freebies, they're not going to judge you, right? One of my earliest recollections of speaking in front of an audience was in church, right? So I would go into church and I'd be asked to read whatever the reading was on a particular Sunday. And the beauty of that was, I remember Mr. Tabraka saying to me, dude, you're speaking like a train. You need to slow down, right? So I got a lot of training while doing that. I didn't think it would be a career at some point, but the beauty of it is that there was no pressure. Nobody was judging me because I was offering them a free service. It's a little bit different when Gary Tittinger, who's speaking next, goes up and says, hey guys, it's going to cost you 25K to listen to me talk about a particular subject matter. Then there's an expectation that I'm paying so much money, your performance better be good. It doesn't matter who you look at, stars across the globe, whether it's Beyonce, her husband Jay-Z, numerous others, many of them started in the church. And they started in the church where nobody judged them. There was no pressure. So ideally what you want is, if you don't have confidence, is you want to find a platform that allows you to speak without pressure. Number 3, know your stuff. You want to know what it is that you're talking about, right? If somebody said to me, Hugo, talk to us about what's it like to be a mother or the process of giving birth. Hell, I'd speak for 20 seconds and I'd be stuck, right? But ask any one of the women that are here who have children to talk about what it's like to be a mother, and they can speak for days, right? I remember playing in an amateur golf competition that was 2.5 hours out of where I lived. Literally for 260 Ks, my mates and I talked about the 2 rounds of golf that we'd played that weekend. It was subject matter that we were familiar with and we could talk about till the cows came home, literally. And I think the final thing is you have to believe in yourself, right? Nobody's going to give it to you on a silver platter. Nobody's going to come to you and say, hey, Daryl, you know what? You're an amazing speaker. Oh, I think you have potential. You're lucky if somebody says that, right? But what you want to do is you want to mirror a talent that you like, not copy, maybe mimic, but see who's good at their game, who's in a space that interests you, and get into that space. The final thing is, as Anka mentioned, I have a show called Cope with Hugo. It's a YouTube show. Set it up, well, I thought about the idea a little under 5 years ago. 5 years ago, I lost my dad. And the one day I just stopped, just parked by the roadside, started bawling my eyes out. And I thought to myself, geez, dude, how do people deal with grief? People that are going through trauma, what do they do? So there are a lot of men in relationships, a lot of men with families, for instance, and they're the pillars of those families. There are also a lot of single women that are pillars of their families, right? So when there is tragedy, the expectation is that they will hold strong, that they will be steadfast. But who is their pillar? Who's there to support them? Because at some point, you need to let go. You need to cry. Where are my boys? I have no boys. I don't know if any of the guys have boys that they can go to and just say, God, dude, I need to cry. Probably not. So it's an opportunity for individuals to walk us through their journey. So a narrative on how they've dealt with grief and trauma. And some of the stories that we've heard are absolutely harrowing. I'm sure Anka will be able to share the link to that platform. But I think what Toastmasters has done is it's sharpened my skill set, because you listen to so many different speakers that have so many different giftings. I'm potentially the only guy that speaks like I do, as Daryl is the only guy who speaks the way he does, right? But what you do is you pick up on the things that they do right, the things that they don't do so well, you try and avoid. I'd like to think that I'm the sum total of all the people I've ever come into contact with. So that's who I am. I am a little bit of Anka, a little bit of Gary, a little bit of JD, a little bit of Evelyn, etc. So that essentially is my story. I'm enjoying Toastmasters. I don't think I've reached my peak. In fact, I think I'm very, very far from it. I'm doing 2 parts at the moment, because obviously I want to get to DTM in the next sort of 6 to 12 months. And in order to do that, you have to do 2 parts. So I'm doing 2 parts with 2 different clubs. I'm on level 4 in both pathways. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is my story.
Bravo, and thank you so much for sharing. You've still got a little bit of time, so I'm just going to open the floor. If anybody has got any questions for Hugo, now will be the time that you're welcome to either raise your hand or unmute yourself, and please go ahead and ask your question. And I'm just going to start, if you don't mind, and ask, what is next for you, Hugo? What is the, like, you've Cope with Hugo is now up and running. What is your next thing that you've been sitting on for 5 years that you need to get done?
Sheesh, I think I'm an ambitious sort of guy. So I think I've only just scratched the surface. I want to be an international brand. My dream is that at some point in my life, a guy in Nicaragua, a guy in Bolivia, a guy in the US, a guy in England, a guy in South Africa, a guy in Timbuktu will say Hugo Ribatika, and all 5 guys will recognize my name. So I think that for me is the ultimate. If I can get to that, I don't know how and what it is that's going to get me there, but when I do get there, I think it's potentially the only time that I may sit down and say, okay, you know what, I've probably achieved my word.
Cool. That sounds great. I see there's another question that's come through the chat, and that is, which elective did you select for level 4, and did the material help you with your talk show?
So with level 4, I'm doing a mentoring program. Did it help me with my talk show? As I said, I've been a member of Toastmasters for 2 years, but I've been doing radio and TV for 20 years. So Toastmasters has enhanced many things. In fact, what Toastmasters has done, I think in all honesty, has put structure to what I do, right? So many of the things I was very, very familiar with. You know, there are many of us that have a gifting. So you don't have to try too hard, but there are things that you're pretty comfortable with. You know, you get up and you talk. You don't have to be encouraged or told to talk. However, there is a structure that is required to be able to do certain things. And one of those things is body language, for instance, right? Toastmasters is big on body language, gesturing, you know, how do you gesture? The noddies that you put in are very, very important. And listening. I have to say that a lot of people will talk about when we watch your shows, you listen very, very carefully. You allow the other person to speak. And I think that's probably one of the biggest things that I've learned from Toastmasters.
Okay, awesome. Well, your time is up. I just realized now, for some reason, something's gone wrong in my Zoom and I cannot show colors. So we're just going to have to wing this, but you are within time. Thank you so much for sharing with us this evening, Hugo. Everyone, a big round of virtual applause for Hugo Ribatika. Thank you so much.
Very much.
Great. So, on to our next speaker of the evening, that is Gary Tintinger. Gary is going to be sharing with us a bit about his journey. He's doing a project, and the title of his speech today is Lose Yourself. So I'd like to hand over to Gary Tintinger. If I can find you on my view here, Gary. There you are. Gary, please go ahead. The stage is yours. And you're on mute. Wait, I'm asking you to unmute quickly. There we go. Right.
Look, if you had one shot, one opportunity to seize everything you ever wanted in one moment, would you capture it or let it slip? Yo, his palms are sweaty, knees weak, arms are heavy. There's vomit on his sweater already, mom's spaghetti. He's nervous, but on the surface he looks calm and ready to drop bombs, but he keeps forgetting what he wrote down. The whole crowd goes so loud, he opens his mouth, but the words won't come out. He's choking. How? Everybody's joking now. The clock's run out, time's up, over, pow. Madam Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters and guests, you now know two things about me. Two things. One is that at some point in time, I listened to Marshall Bruce Mathers III, commonly known or more famously known as Eminem. And the second thing you've learned tonight is I can't rap. And very clearly, Eminem is in fact a unicorn. The truth is, other than Eminem and what was his name, some other white guy, for the most part, we can't rap. So Lose Yourself is a song by, as you're aware, by the American superstar rapper Eminem. And the song contains lyrics about the life of the character Jimmy B. Rabbit, which was kind of modeled on Eminem's own personal life. And it was in the movie 2002, the film 8 Mile, which starred Eminem, and he obviously had the title role of B. Rabbit. Now, this movie is based on numerous events in Eminem's life, and it follows the challenges of B. Rabbit, an aspiring white rapper. And he struggled.
Apologies, Gary. Gary, sorry, I'm just going to stop you. I wouldn't usually do this, but is your camera supposed to be on?
The camera should be on.
It's not. It's not. There we go. Okay, please continue.
There you go. Thank you for that. Okay, so I tried to do something fancy with the technology and it didn't work that well. So I did this camera change angle thing going on. So I went, all right, so getting back to Lose Yourself is about this, was hailed at the time as one of the most inspirational songs of its era. And it won at the time in 2002, it won Eminem an Oscar. And it was the first time that a rap song won an Oscar. And coincidentally, Eminem didn't go and collect his prize. He had a producer collection. He didn't think he was going to win. He didn't kind of understand it. And, the lyrics and kind of at the time, part of the reason that it won this prize is because it really motivated and inspired listeners. The song encouraged listeners to lose themselves in the moment, not to miss the golden opportunities that life presents them with. So I suppose by now you maybe, hopefully, you're asking yourself, what on earth does rap music have to do with contest speaking? So the answer quite simply is that this is most probably the most accurate description of contest speaking that I've ever heard. I want to share the lyrics with you. Let's just go through this. His palms are sweaty, knees weak, arms are heavy. Okay, I don't know about the vomit on the sweater, but maybe you are kind of upchucking a little bit in the back of your throat. Mom's spaghetti. He's nervous, but on the surface he looks calm, so we're trying to be calm and ready to drop bombs, but he keeps forgetting what he wrote down. And the crowd goes so loud, he opens his mouth, but the words don't come out. And he's choking. Everybody's choking. The clock runs out. Time's up. Blow. So that's pretty much how it happens in contest speaking. You have this one shot, one opportunity. And now, how would I know that? Well, in 2017, I had that one shot, that one opportunity. I was privileged. Yeah, I was really more than privileged. I was honored to represent District 74 in the semifinals of the World Championship of Public Speaking. And then this year, in fact, just last month, I won the Professional Speakers Association of South Africa, the Speaker Factor contest. Wait. Stop the bus. Madam Toastmaster, we need another intervention here. This is not the way it's supposed to work. When you invited me to this wonderful event, you promised me a world-class audience. So I'm looking for some interaction here. I mean, I even rapped for you guys. So what we need to do is we need to put the mics on. I don't think the instructions went out correctly. So when I say I went to the world champs, you go, ooh, not you go, you guys go, ooh. When I say I won Speaker Factor, you go, ah. So that's not all. We're going to change things up a little bit here. At the end of the speech, you're not going to be evaluating me. I'll be evaluating you as an audience. So I'll be looking for things like participation, applause, laughing, standing ovations. Standing ovations, in fact, will get you bonus points. If you laugh at all my jokes, you'll get extra points. So let's try that again. Let's put the microphones on. You can also put the cameras on, and we'll give that another bash now that you understand the instructions. So here we go. Be ready. So in 2017, I was privileged. No, I was honored to represent District, come on, your time, District 74 in the semi-final of the World Championship of Public Speaking. This year, just last month, I won the Professional Speakers Association of South Africa Speaker Factor speech contest. Good. You're getting it. Not bad. You're not bad as an audience. So let me tell you why contest speaking is different to the other kinds of speaking, the other types of public speaking. So we're all public speakers here. Most of us are public speakers here. And we're probably all aware of the word glossophobia. So glossophobia is the speech or this anxiety we feel for public speaking. The word glossophobia derives from the Greek word glossa, meaning tongue, and fear or dread. Now, so some people have this specific phobia, while others might have a broader range of social phobias or social anxiety disorders, and it kind of all manifests in this absolute terrifying kind of anxiety of getting up and speaking in public. And I suppose whilst everybody has their own specific reasons for why they have the phobia, one of the most common, and it's a trend amongst everybody that suffers with glossophobia, is this fear of being embarrassed, rejected. It's the fear of being judged by our peers and messing up. And yet, in contest speaking, that's exactly what we do. We place ourselves in the spotlight to be judged. Can you even? So in most forms of public speaking, if you mess up a little, the audience actually sympathizes with you. They urge you on, and especially in Toastmasters and clubs, it's a safe space. I suppose in contest speaking, the audience urges you on as well, but not the judges and not the clock. You have one shot, one opportunity. So who in their right mind would do such a thing, and why? So maybe it's about winning. Surely the prize money is amazing. Why else would you go and subject yourself to this? Yeah, no prize money. There's no prize money. So here's the thing. Contest speaking is actually more about losing than it is about winning. So if you're going to enter a speech contest, whether it's Professional Speakers Association or Toastmasters, just to win, I'm afraid you're going to be disappointed. You see, the reality is that speech contests are subjective. And as much as we can try to create a framework within which the judges can give you an honest representation and honest feedback, and without kind of having any bias, well, we're human. It's always open to subjectivity and bias. So let's be honest with ourselves right now. Is Mike Carr, the current world champion of public speaking, the very best speaker in the world? I don't know. I don't think so. I'd venture, and to Hugo's point earlier, that there are many, many speakers that are way better than him. He may be the winner, but does that make the other 35,000 contestants losers? Methinks not. Am I the best speaker in the Professional Speakers Association right now? I sincerely doubt that. Friends, contrary to popular belief, speech contest, the Toastmasters World Champion of Public Speaking contest is not about trophies, titles, and triumphs. They are in fact about improvement, both as leaders and communicators. Contests are about personal development. They're about helping others grow. They're about service. I've come to appreciate that in speech contests, the joy is truly in the journey. Speech contests are in fact golden opportunities in life to get up, dress up, and step up. Participation is the prize. Here's a closing thought for you. The purpose of public speaking and public speaking contests is not to see which speaker is the best. It's actually never about the speaker. And repeat that. It's never about the speaker. Public speaking is about the audience. It's about you. It's about the message. As a public speaker, whether we're competing or not, our duty is to convey a message to the audience. The knowledge, the information, the inspiration. Tell a story, make a point. If you dress for success, use some stagecraft, project your voice, you're well on the way to winning a speech contest. If you had one shot, one opportunity to seize everything you ever wanted in one moment, would you capture it or just let it slip? Let him Toastmaster.
Bravo. Thank you, Gary.
Thank you for getting me to put my camera back on. Jeez.
No worries. I was not expecting that rap, I must be honest. It blew me away. But yeah, keep your day job. Good attempt. Alrighty. Thanks so much for sharing that with us. And I think it's really important that we all push ourselves a little bit out of our comfort zones. If you're the kind of person who gets kicks from competing and really does enjoy participating in a contest, it's not for everybody. But if you do and you're just a little scared, it's really important just to give yourself that bit of a push. So that's very important. Are there any questions for Gary? Would you guys like to type it in the chat or just unmute yourself and go ahead and ask them? Now is your chance.
Gary, I have a question. What would you say in your speaking profession has been the biggest hurdle that you've had to overcome?
So I think probably my biggest challenge, Hugo, is I've always been, I suppose, I've always spoken in business and I've presented, and I used that in to advance my career. And I thought that I was kind of really good at kind of off the cuff type speaking. And I came into Toastmasters and realized that I had actually no idea. So there's a lot of unlearning, really a lot of unlearning to do, and then kind of just getting rid of any of the pretense that you might have that you're good at this, and start at the beginning and start building up your skill set. So I have come to realize that, contrary to what I thought, I'm actually not a good impromptu speaker. I'm much better at prepared speeches. And so I can go away and prepare a speech and work on it for a few weeks and then come out and deliver it. And I do that in contests. And the hurdle that I'm now currently trying to overcome is impromptu speaking and just speaking off the cuff. And there's some people that are really amazing at that, and I look up to them and I aspire to be like that.
Could I just say something very quickly? Sorry, Anka. Sure. The reason I asked that, Gary, and whilst I'm eating into your time, is because I think one of my biggest challenges has been complacency. So sometimes what happens is you think you're good at something, and maybe you are. So you don't put as much work as the next guy who may not be as talented as you. And the challenge is that hard work counts for so much that it can surpass the guy who's talented purely because you put in the hard work. So I think that for me was important, and like Gary, a big realization.
Hugo, I really want to echo that. So the first contest I ever entered, I thought I was doing really well, and I lost in the final division P to somebody who had practiced more than I had. Exactly that. And it was the first contest that I went to, and that literally was the differences. He practiced from the area contest to the division contest, and he got there and he beat me. And I took, to your point, I took that lesson away, and I went in the match one. Every time I fail, every time I stumble in public speaking, it's exactly because I haven't put enough effort in. I haven't rehearsed enough. I haven't thought about it enough. And one of the things that I have learned, what I used to try to do is I used to try do my speeches, practice my speeches whilst I was driving. You can't. You actually have to practice your speeches. You've got to stand and practice the speeches. And you've got to talk them through in real time. And the reason you do that, this is what a lot of people don't really understand. The reason you do that is because if you stumble, and we stumble sometimes. If you stumble, you've got to get used to carrying yourself through. You've got to get used to picking up and carrying on. And when you're doing it in your head, you just start again. You're like, okay, well, I stumbled there. And I've seen that so many times where people haven't practiced it out loud, and then they stumble, and then they can't recover from that. So that's really one of the biggest lessons I've learned is practice. I used to be very self-conscious of it, standing and practicing a speech. So I don't recommend practicing in front of a camera. I do recommend recording your speech, doing it out loud, and continuing. If you stumble, continue right through the speech.
Awesome. Thanks, Gary. As you can see, the time is up. We did get a couple other questions, and I think a few other people were also still gearing up to ask their questions by the looks of it. So please do type your question into the chat. There's already a couple in there. Gary, will you have a look at the chat and just respond on those questions via chat? And then I will
do so.
Appreciate that. Great. Well, thank you again so much for sharing with us your journey. And I'm sure it was quite the exciting experience winning that prize, be it no cash prize, even so. All right. Next up is Lucinda Harmon, and she's just recently been to Namibia for her very first TEDx speech, and we're going to be hearing all about that. So for her speech title, TED What? Lucinda Harmon. Lucinda Harmon, please take the stage.
Thank you, Anka, for arranging this event. First and foremost, that's not part of my speech. If you've got questions, this is actually a Q&A kind of style project number 4. And do put them in the chat box. Anka will then lead that through to me. Otherwise, at the end, you're welcome to ask me questions. TED what? I get that question all the time. Like, you went to TEDx, TED what? And a lot of people don't know about TEDx. It was actually quite an aha moment for me, because this was a dream I came on 5 years ago. I came to one day, I realized my bucket list, you know, writing that bucket list in life. And my bucket list number 1 was TEDx. Funny enough, Namibia was number 5. So my high, because you've asked for one of my highs was doing a Toastmasters launch event in Midrand. And the convener for this particular Swakopmund TEDx was in the audience. He didn't say a word till that next Monday. And he got hold of me and said to me, would you like to speak at TEDx? Now, I was absolutely blown away. 3 months ago, before that, I'd given up on TEDx. I'd been chasing Brighton, chasing Pretoria, chasing Cape Town and Johannesburg. I wanted to be a TEDx speaker. And then a Brighton convener, he got hold of me, a guy called Toby. And he said to me, Lucinda, you wanted too much. And if you wanted that much, you're never going to get it. I want you to go and spend time on your idea worth sharing. Stop wanting it and let it find you. At the time, that was really sore, extremely painful, but I listened. And that was the October before the January that I was given a TEDx. And in that is a lesson in itself that you will get to discover as I speak through this. And this is not a formal kind of speech. It really is about, I want to give you everything I can and share with you what I can. Because I guess in the audience today, there are people that really want a TEDx. Now, TEDx is so big. It's got this big name, like everybody wants to be a TEDx speaker. And there stands the problem, is that it has so much power. It has so much meat in it, in the game, that the pressure is huge. And what happens is it starts affecting you. So here we go with the TEDx. I've got the gig. I've got the date. All is looking great. And I'm going to give you the 3 main things that I had to work on this time period. And it's 18-minute speech, funny enough, an 18-minute speech today. We're liking the 18s at the moment. So first of all was preparation. Second was mindset. Mindset, did I say mindset? And then third was planning. Now with the first thing, the first being preparation. You've got to find your idea worth sharing. Maybe an academic, maybe in technology, whatever it might be. Because TED is, as we know, write in the chat box, what does TED stand for? I want to know. So write it down there. It's really important to work on that idea. That idea is everything. So whether you put it together in the form of your story, your data, your research, your life, whatever that might be, what is important is to know that you need to share this because this is yours. It's nobody else's, not a copycat. This is your unique story that the world is waiting to hear. Something that I more and more got to learn as I went through. And it's important that the idea, you start with it, you lead people through it, and you end with it. There's a most important thing that I learned in the process. It's called a bumper sticker. Now, folks, that's not for a car. That is your message. The message is a 10-word message. Mine was, you are as free as you allow yourself to be. And make sure you imprint that with everything you go through. Every story, every part of quotes, anything you bring in is going to lead you back to that bumper sticker quote, that you become world-renowned for that. Now, anyone who listened to my speech in that entire time that I did, and I went around the world, all over the place, and in the audience, has remembered one thing. You are as free as you allow yourself to be. And there's nobody else that's done that. Nobody else that's written that. Nobody else that's lived your life. And nobody else that knows what you do. So don't waste your time on worrying about other people. You might use other people's messages or quotes or research, whatever it might be. But there's nobody like you, and the world needs to hear from you. Now we go on to the actual speech. That's point 2. Under the first part, by the way. It's good Toastmaster, you've got to do our 3s. What was important was I wrote that speech. I erased the speech. I rewrote the speech. I erased the speech. I rewrote the speech. I did it 3 times. I hand wrote the speech, so I imprinted some emotion into it. I wrote the speech a lot of times. And I had a Toastmaster by my side, a very, very amazing Toastmaster, who watched my writing and who changed it appropriately and left out things that she felt would bring the audience down or I'd lose the audience in the journey. A lot went into the scripting process. There was a lot of script. There was probably enough script for a couple of hours. And that was down to condensing that. But the script is really important. And that you base it on your audience. You cannot be everything to everybody, as we learn in PR. You can't. You're going to have a set crowd of people you're talking to. If your mind is worried about the critics, then you are not going to put it together correctly. You've got to represent yourself 100%. And it starts before the speech. It starts on the script. And the third part under the first point is practice. Gary spoke about it. Practice is essential. You've got to go out there in many different audiences in the world, like I did. I started in South Africa at one of the clubs. I did a 5 to 7 minute. Nobody really knew what I was up to. I then headed out and I went to Ireland. I did UK, I did Saudi, I did California, I did New York. I went around and then I ended up in an advanced club in South Africa. And what's really critical is, number one, is to watch that audience and how they absorb and the feedback, and watch them. Watch what people say to you. The most important thing is evaluations are good, but for a TEDx, when you're going to those kind of audiences globally, the evaluations become detrimental to your path. Your confusion becomes unsurmountable. I was thrown between everything between evaluators from across the world, one saying, add that, leave that out, do that, but don't do that. Go here, don't go here. Eventually, I was so confused that I almost just gave up. And I'm going to say that you need to look at that. Very importantly, is the practicing in the right audiences, and you must know where they are. Your message, and think about it. Where was your key audience? Mine was the UK and the USA, without a doubt, because of the message I had. And I worked that audience to my advantage. Now we were on Zoom. It was a difficult time for us all. It was really difficult. And I never got that one-on-one time that I needed because TEDx Swakopmund was live. It was on stage. So what I did is in South Africa, I was very gifted. My friends organized, and Toastmasters, and one of them is here, okay? Organized an event for me the Wednesday before I left on that Friday. And that was probably the thing that saved the day. I got to practice in front of an audience and people that liked me. Actually, that was a good part too. Remember that everyone's not going to like you on a TEDx. It's not safe and supportive like a Toastmasters club. Now you're open to the world. But that practice gave me a lot of strength. That's the practice that I pulled and drew on a lot. And even when I anchored, they taught me an anchoring exercise. I brought a lot of this anchoring into the stage in Swakopmund. When I flew into Swakopmund, I headed for the actual venue. Like nobody else, I went to the venue because I want to feel comfortable. I'm out of my country. It's COVID time. It was tough. 2 tests either side, a lot of uncertainty, a lot of nerves. I went there. I helped them unpack, put the cameras up, put the mics in. I started being part of that because it gave me some comfort. By that morning, because the event was the evening, I actually started doing a rehearsal. I got up and I did the entire speech or talk. And that to me was another saving part to this. You see, I practiced the speech more than anyone can imagine. I practiced speech 3 times a day. I practiced in front of stages. It came down to I was prepared and ready. Now we get down to mindset, the second part. Now, this is so important. Practice, perfect, master, brilliant. Game on. You're ready to go. And now I'm going to tell you something else. When you get there, it's time to let it go. It can be great. R counters, grammarians, it will be fabulous. When it gets down to that stage, you have to have it all together. I had, at that time, remembered imagery. I had all things, pockets of things I could fall on if I fell out of shape, if I stumbled doing my actual talk. And I had absolutely I had a strong opening, by the way, that was 30 seconds before I went on stage because I couldn't work it out. But I had a main picture, main stories, basic opening, closing, 3 parts, like a Toastmaster speech. But I had very powerful stories. They made me vulnerable. Now that got in the way a couple of times. It's very difficult going into some audiences worldwide and you make yourself vulnerable. And that started playing games with me too. I wanted to run. I started getting irritated in front of audiences. The wrong side started coming up. And my speech can go either way because it's about presence, it's about abuse. There's a lot of things that come into it. And I had to then get into my mind and realize that this was the biggest thing I had to master. 2 weeks before that TEDx, guess what happened? I fell apart. Honest. I realized that I'm actually a bad speaker. I can't do it. I could not even speak. So a friend of mine who's an ex-Toastmaster called me to his home. Said, I'm going to coach you. Get up there. Show me what you got. And he looked bored. And he got up, worked on his laptop, walked around, poured himself a drink, got back down. He said, you know what? Here's a bottle of wine. You're going to go home now. Get out of here. Do me a favor. Go and tell me 100 reasons why, if TEDx doesn't launch your career, it's a wonderful, great thing. I said, you've got to be kidding me. I wanted way too much than that. He said, you've got to let it go. You've done the work now. And now you have to work on your mind. You're still a Toastmaster. You've got to become a speaker. You've got to jump into your professional speaking shoes. This is where it counts. You're playing small. Get over yourself, get over past yourself, and get on with becoming the speaker you are. If I tell you that process was harrowing, it was worse than harrowing. I sat with that bottle of wine, looking at this bottle and thinking, I don't know who's going to win here today or tomorrow. And it took me 2 days. And I had a mentor all the time that knew I had it going. How many have you got? I got 30. Keep going. And how many you got? 45. Keep going. And I go, I can't do any more. Lucinda, it's 100. Do you want to get over it? And the minute I got that exercise, I realized the power of this exercise. I got out of my own way. No more was I stressing myself that if I fail, I was going to be doomed and gloom for life. Because this bucket list number 1 was driving me crazy. The TEDx stage and embarrassing myself for failing was getting too big. And so I move on to the point 3, planning. That was my second thing that saved me as a speaker. The goal is the beginning and not the end. TEDx was not the whole goal, it's part of the journey. And I made a 12-month planner starting with the TEDx event at Swakopmund. Again, that was my friend that told me to do that. And avoid the void, that depression post TEDx. I managed to do that because I'd planned well. I got off the stage and life went on. It was actually just another speech. As my mentor told me. She told me before, it's just another speech, get over it. Stop stressing yourself out. That you'll be okay. If you fail on that stage, you'll be okay. I promise you. You'll still see me. I'll still be your mentor. Don't worry. I promise. So we got to that. And then it was the factor of post TEDx. What are you going to do with it? So Hugo had interviewed me just before I left. And I had a good idea. I decided I'm coming home for something really good. And then I had a lot of other ideas as well to turn it to a keynote for corporates and my corporate coaching. And I'd already put the plans in process going up to the TEDx. When I got off the TEDx stage, I was relieved. I was super happy. I'd achieved what I wanted. For a lot of people, that's not the story. I was super calm, heading up into that actual speech. Like a lot of people, a lot of nerves. I was super calm. I grounded, anchored, like my team had taught me before I left South Africa. Team South Africa is what held me. And I got to tell you that it was a phenomenal journey. And it really is one in a lifetime. You go crack a number 1 and 5 in the bucket list. That is what I did, fellow Toastmasters. I don't know what time we had. Anke, if you can give me an idea of time. If I need to go on, I'll turn to Q&A and then I'll take it from there.
You just passed 15 minutes. So I think if you switch to Q&A now, we'll be good.
Let's go. Anybody got anything? You can even just open your mics and ask.
I got a question. So I know that like afterwards you're saying that it felt like it was just another speech, but afterwards, didn't you just a little bit feel like you won the lottery, like that was it, you made it?
Yeah, thank you, Anke, for that question. I mean, is it really it? Is it just really another speech? You know, I had one of my mentors with me as well, who was performing with me. And I must say, having her there and just giving me that hug at the end and saying, there's a sunset there, go take the picture. And we captured that moment, like straight off that stage. That kind of sunk it in. And I said, just pinch me, just pinch me. And she said, no, wait, just, I want to remember. I want to embed that memory. So I think more it was the comfort I felt on the stage. It was a very comfortable, it was almost like I got into my flow. Before there wasn't that flow. On that TEDx stage, I felt the flow. I felt like the speaker finally, and I really knew that every part of what I'd done, the preparation, every part was integral to the success of that speech.
To the audience, please feel free to type your questions in the chat. I'll keep an eye out there. Otherwise, just unmute yourself and please go ahead and ask your question to Lucinda.
Hi, Lucinda.
Hello.
Yeah, it's known to me. So You mentioned something about chasing and just giving it an opportunity to come to you. How can you not chase, but still sort of position yourself in sort of your own mid-rant where someone in the audience notices you?
Thank you, Nandavisa. I know TEDx is one of the things that you do want as well. It's important to you. I think it's really important to make it known. I mean, make it known that this is something you want and have it as a goal. You know, never lose sight of it being your goal. But don't become desperate for it and don't make an obsession, because that desperation, obsession actually eventually for the conveners and becomes something they don't like. And that's something I realized is focus on the idea we're sharing. Because if you have an idea and a concept that is so aha and so life-changing for the world, whoop, they're gonna snap you up and you're gonna have the stage. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, it did. Thank you, Lucinda.
Weird red. Last 15 seconds.
Open it up for one more question.
Right, let me just say one thing. Then we're going to get another question. Thank you, Anke, for actually organizing this. A big thank you to you. It really is a proudly L2 event. That is in Division L for those that are not from South Africa. And we are proud of our division. It's Rosebank Toastmasters and Carpe Diem Toastmasters Club. And truly all three speakers are from those two clubs in area L2, and Anke being the area director. So I would like you to open your mics and give Anke a round of applause, please, everybody.
Thank you. Yeah, we pulled a rabbit out of a hat for this one, Lucinda. Last week, Wednesday, we said, how about we pull together an event? And voila, here we are. So I'm very glad that we got the opportunity to learn from each of your journeys and get a bit of insight as to what was difficult for you and how did you surpass the hurdles that came along your way. So thank you to all three of the speakers this evening for sharing that with us. And I'd like to officially close the evening. However, I'm going to say that any of the speakers who've got a bit of time are welcome to remain. If anyone would like to ask further questions, now will be the time for that. Thank you everyone for a great evening, and a big round of applause to everyone who took part.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Thanks, Barbara. Bye.
Good night.
Thank you, Anke, and good night, everyone.
Cheers, Edmore.
Thanks very much. It was amazing. Thanks. Enjoy your evening. Bye.
Okay.